of movement towards transition is maintaining close communications with the developer. And we have those communications in place. They work very well and they're very cordial, and that will assist us, that will make a big difference when reaching our final goal of complete management independence from the developer. In January of 2018, there was an election. It was earlier at the beginning of this year, and we took on 3 new members, and it was important to get them up to speed on all the issues facing the board so that they could make informed decisions concerning the community. And we did that very successfully, and I'm very proud of the fact that that went so well. We reclaimed 1,850 square feet of floor space. If you've been to the basement and have seen it, place renovated, that's it. If you haven't, take a look at it. It allows for the use of the multi-purpose use by everyone in the community, the board, committees, clubs, any type of activity that goes on in the community. That space is available. In recapturing that was a big accomplishment. Working within the budget constraints is hidden, and it's kind of a dull aspect of what goes on, that somebody has to pay the bills, and maintaining our operational integrity and sound operational practices keeps us in a good financial condition. And we have done that over the years, and in past boards, and back to the AC days up to now, and we're in a solid financial condition. The most current iteration of the amenities rules and regs, as Jim pointed out, is being worked on and will probably be out in the next couple of days. Having done that is really a significant achievement because of ease in access and ease of usage by all the residents in the community. So we took the documents that were piecemeal, put them under one cover, and very professionally done. And we hope you enjoy using it, and for ease of access and understanding. So I think you'll benefit greatly by that. We also developed a policy to allow for a fair system of reserving rooms and just space in general in the entire community. And this is to fairly accommodate all the community activities, the board, committees, clubs, 501c3s. In addition to the board activities, which has occupied my time over the past few years, I do two other volunteer, I'm involved in 2 other volunteer activities. One is both of these are through the veterans group of which I'm a member. One is called the Veterans Court, and it's a 26-month program for veterans who have felony convictions. And they enter this program, and it's a way of staying out of jail, and I'm a mentor in that program. And so I have one veteran with whom I work, and I mentor him, and I function primarily as a sounding board. Just when I need to talk to a fellow veteran, that's what I do. There's also one other aspect of the volunteer work, and that is working with Veterans Hospice, paying visits to veterans who are in hospice care, either at their home or in their place or in their hospice facility. We go in and present them with some recognition and thank them for their service, and that's particularly meaningful in as much as they are in a hospice situation. I'm also a member of CAI. That's not a voluntary thing. As a board member, the Community Association Institute is a place where they offer educational opportunities to teach me how to be a board member, to cover duties and responsibilities, collections, every aspect of board membership is taught. And board members are encouraged to attend those sessions, and I have attended a number of those over the past few years, which has made me a better board member. I wish to continue on the board, primarily because I've brought the community along in my own small way for the past several years, and I'd like to bring the community kind of over the finish line to transition and then beyond that. That is, by doing so, I want to emphasize three areas that I think are critical in accomplishing that. One is the relief of debt, that is the advance. It's 2.638 million. We need to get that relieved, and that is priority one. Maintain a healthy reserve. We're in good shape right now. We should continue to be in good shape going forward in well past transition. And to stay on firm financial footing from an operational standpoint, the day-to-day operations are critical. It's making sure that we spend our money wisely, it's not done frivolously, that we spend on a day-to-day basis according to our budget. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I ask for your vote. Thank you very much.
At this time, we will open it up for questions. And in fairness to, this is a larger group than we had this morning, I would ask that you limit it to one question until we've got around to everybody that wants to and make a statement or ask a question. So at this time, I will open it up. And I also I didn't mention it first this morning, but this session and all sessions are being videotaped and recorded. So you're aware of that. It's focused on these guys, but your voice will pick up. And so if you have a question, and I acknowledge you, please stand up and direct your question, but be loud enough that those on the back row will be able to hear you. So who's first? Ain't no way. Okay. I guess no way.
I just have a question. How many votes does Coulter have this year in the election?
He will have approximately between 50 and 75 at the time the election takes place. If they sell a bunch, that number goes down. But he will not have less than 75 today.
John, I liked your comment about increasing communication and getting more feedback from residents. How do you plan to do that?
Garrett, do you want to?
No, go ahead.
You don't want to follow the process from before? Okay,
We'll let you go first, and then they can do it.
Sorry. Well, I start with the belief that conversation is better than, or two-way conversation is better than being talked at from a table or a podium. And I'm not sure I know all the, in fact I do not know all the laws in Georgia governing how boards should operate. But I'm going, for the moment, just assume that I would have license to be able to, or we would have license to be able to engage with you in a bunch of small groups, to have a conversation. My fantasy would be to have that small group conversation same time every week, in the same location, and you just show up and we talk and you ask questions, and in that moment, what I think I understand from my conversations behind closed doors with the board, I would then share them with you. Provided, and this is a very, very important, capital P, provided you understand that whatever I share with you is based on what I understand at the moment. And as I learn more from more conversation, as I get exposure to the issue from different points of view, what I think about it will change. And I would want to have that ongoing forum where I could say, hey, remember I told you X? Well, I've been rethinking it. I'm thinking it's X minus 1 now. And that way we can sort of maintain an exchange between what is important and relevant from the resident's point of view and what is important and relevant from the board's point of view.
Jim?
Well, this board, I think we've improved our transparency and communications tenfold. We do now hold 2 town hall meetings a year, and the last town hall session was what, 3 or 4 sessions that 300-400 people came to. We also have quarterly meetings with the committees to see if they have any problems. We have quarterly meetings with the clubs to determine if they have any problems. We meet with the new homeowners periodically. We have monthly board meetings. You're also invited to come to an executive session if you contact Gary and tell me what the subject matter is. We do that. We also deal with various work groups. Like I said, like on the Rules Committee, I work with them constantly to give them advice and make sure they're going in the right direction and that type of thing. But so we do quite a bit. I know we can always do better, but sometimes, you know, we have, let me give you an example. Deaton's Creek, they don't have public meetings. So the law doesn't require it, but we are much more transparent in a place like Deaton's Creek. We've traveled to other over 55 communities to see how they operate, such as gate security, that type of thing. We've been working on that as well. And so we do go to other communities, we see how they operate, and then we bring that back here, you know, and discuss it. So, but like John is, I'm willing to meet with anybody. I play pickleball, I go to poker, I do these things. I'm constantly being barraged with questions, and they want to know how this is done or how that is done. And so we try to be as transparent as we can, but we will take any suggestions that anybody has, and we will implement it. Thank you.
Ron?
You know,
We just go down the road. Ron?
That question came up, of course, specifically from my perspective. The one thing perhaps that we did do as well on is using the committees and the clubs as a source of information back to the community. Someone has to decide at some point, who do we ask? I've been approached by people from time to time by saying, how come you didn't ask me about X, Y, and Z? Why didn't you do that? And I'd say, well, you know, we have to figure out a better way of doing that. And I said, one of the things there specifically is use the committees and the clubs as a source of feedback to us, because these are groups of people who know one another very well and have their information, and have contact with a lot of people in the community. And a more effective way of doing that, I think, would give us, from the board, good information as to take the pulse of the community, how does the community feel about any given issue. But for the most part, with the open board meetings and the like, that has been a big improvement. When we compare that to what we're required to do, I think we're constantly struggling to do better. We're only required to have, if you can imagine, 1 meeting a year. I could not imagine coming into any kind of meeting on a once-a-year basis as a board member, and to think they would somehow be effective in any way. That would be disastrous. But anyhow, use of the committees and the clubs would be the thing that I would focus on first to improve the feedback from the community.
Paul?
I think as we move through transition, we need to have, and I agree with John, I think we need to have small group meetings, but I think we need to have interaction with the community on the direction in which we are expressing our values. All these decisions that we're going to make, both policy and financial decisions, really depend on what is primary to the residents of this community. You can never get a unanimity, but you can get a good sense of what the priorities are in the community and use those priorities to create a context for decision-making as you move forward. So you don't have to have another conversation every time you move forward. You can have an interaction with residents at a board meeting, but if residents understand the direction that we're heading in and that they understand that the decisions we're proposing to them and we're listening to them about those decisions, they are occurring in a context which drives us all forward. So I think that's a key element of transition, to bring the community together, to talk about what we value and how that value will be expressed in decisions that we make as we go forward.
Next question. Yes, ma'am?
Can I ask two? We're being asked to vote for 3 people out of the 5. Are we adding another person to the board, or who's coming off the board that's not represented?
Frank Mitchell is not here, and he's in the back. Frank Bodock. Frank Bodock is not rerunning Ron and GMR.
Okay, and then my second question is for John and Bob and Dan Stanton. Have you met with the current board members to get a sense on the time commitment that's involved in being a board member? I mean, because I've heard horror stories about, every time I see Ron or Jim, you're going to another meeting. So I was just curious, have you met with current board members to find out what's involved?
Well, that's a fair question, but I think that we have the same observations that you do. It's a very, very intensive, time-consuming volunteer position. So my short answer would be no, I haven't sat down specifically with them to have that conversation, but by observation and by interaction with the board through some of the other roles and positions I've been in, getting their time and attention is a challenge because they're up to their neck in alligators. So I fully appreciate that, and I'm sitting here anyway.
Well, I served for 4 years on the transition, on the advisory committee, and served for a year and a half on the transition committee, interacting with the board on a regular basis, and actually making a lot of decisions that need to be made during the period of time when we were only advisory to the developer. And let me tell you, there was no more intensive a time than we had when we tried to evaluate property managers, when we were actually standing in, doing a lot of the things. There were 4 to 5 contractual issues that the property management folks were not providing. We were doing that. The advisory committee was actually doing a lot of that work. So we had to convince the developer during that time that they needed to change property managers, because we were putting in hours and hours. We were meeting every week during that time. So I'm well aware of the, and I'm still willing to do it. I must be crazy.
Rick, do you want to?
I can say a little bit, knowing Dan and how much time and effort that he puts in now with all the various activities he does with the engineering work group, the Marina Committee, with the ARC, his volunteer services that he does outside of the community. I'm aware of what he does there. He will be transitioning the ARC responsibilities over to one of the members there, relieving himself of that responsibility to make room for his commitment. As I said, he will be arms, legs, and feet involved in everything that goes on. I can assure you of that.
Next, I saw.
I hear a lot about all the committees we have and all the groups we have and all the meetings we have. My 6 years here, I find we have a hard time getting resolution. And without getting into the specifics of the incident, something was brought to the board's attention at least 4 times, in writing, emails, etc. And it affected 40 or 50 homes. We showed to the board exactly what the rules were in the book. And to this day, it hasn't been resolved in spite of the effort of one board member. One board member tried. In spite of that, to this day, it has not been resolved. And there's never been an explanation of why the board could do something. They did something, but it wasn't even close to what the rules or regulations said. And I hope in the future, there's some feedback. There's got to be an end to any question.
If you'll get with me afterwards, and then I'll take it up.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Mhm.
Let me have a brief answer on that. One thing that we have implemented though is because a lot of questions come to us at the board meetings after we hold our meeting. And we have an action list that we prepare now to hopefully eliminate that type of situation. And Robin Regal handles that for us. And so hopefully that won't happen again. But if it does, you know, contact Gary or one of us and we'll definitely get on it.
Back.
I'd like to thank the board for having the open meeting session. I think that's gone a long way. I would ask the current board and the new board members if they would consider 1 week prior to the open meeting, publish an agenda. People get there and make a decision that you, I'm sure, given due process to, but we do not have any ability to provide input to. So by publishing an agenda a week ahead will allow us to register to be, for our opinions, known to the board before it's voted upon.
Next. Frank?
Hi, I'm Frank Novick, and I'm the guy on the board currently who's going to be saying goodbye at the end of the year. I know how hard this board has worked to protect the interest of the community. One of my chief concerns as we have this magnitude of change is how do you propose to keep control over the cost of living here in Preston? In other words, curtailing as best you can increases in HOA fees, the thought of assessments, things like that. How do you feel about your ability to control those costs?
John?
Well, I certainly still have a lot to learn about what the costs are, where the money goes, and what is reasonable to spend your hard-earned money on. But my short answer to Frank's question is that I'm interested in, I'm concerned about what is the value for the dollar that we spend. And I think, from my point of view, everything is sort of fair game to be reevaluated in terms of what is the value that we get for the dollar that we spend. Now that value definition, I hope, will be tied to some vision or strategic plan or some notion of where do we want to get to and what kind of a community do we want to be, because that's how we would begin to measure whether spending a dollar on that actually helps us get there.
Jim?
Well, the main thing is we have a treasurer that puts her fist down our throat if we try to spend anything that we don't have money for. And she's doing an outstanding job of controlling that, and we have another member of the board that's in the finances, Sid, that works right along with her. But we have been working on that. As I gave in my opening statement, we save, $30,000 in insurance a year. We created a website that's going to save us a few thousand a year. Our reserves, we're concentrating on that right now, and they're being fully funded, and we're in excellent shape compared to any other community that you can look at. So we are watching our finances. We will not undertake anything without studying the issue very critically, and I assure you that that will not happen. And like Ron has said earlier, we are in very good, sound financial shape.
Ron?
I think what an important aspect of this is the budgeting process. If we can calculate based upon the number of rooms occupied what our revenue is, we do a good job at doing that. Right now, we are, and will be by the end of the year, at about 62% of our reserve requirements. And we still have, and we have a couple $100,000 in operating capital in the bank. By the end of 2019, assuming that there are no catastrophic events, we'll be over 80% of our reserve requirements will have been met, which is really remarkable. And it goes to the very tight-fisted way in which money is spent. To John's point, what are we getting for our dollar? It's not that we say, well, we need a new contract for pool service, just go out and get it. Everything like that is looked at very critically. Where can we save money? It's why we saved $30,000 on the overall insurance coverage. And there are other examples like that, not for that much money, but everything is looked at critically. And a good budgeting process brings that about. And if we continue to do that, we'll be on sound financial footing, not just up to transition, but well beyond, because we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here a while, and so it's important that we stay in good or in solid financial footing.
I think I agree with most of what's being said. One of the things I'm a little bit concerned about is that during this transition period, we get a handle on where we're going and what that budget is going to look like out in the future. And I'm concerned that we're not doing our due diligence far enough in advance to predict what resources we might need, to look at what that budget might be like, and to develop a set of values and projects that would relate back to that context. So in my way of thinking, we need a 3-year plan that starts this coming year and extends out to 2021, so that we know where we stand, we get a good idea of where we're headed, and get a control on the cost. And also think about what we can do, not just what we can't do, but what we can do if we focus our resources on key projects that the entire community supports.
Question? Sid?
Just a comment, not a question, just to further what the gentleman on the stage said about the finances. We've been doing a lot of work very recently on a 5-year plan. As was said earlier, at the end of this fiscal year, which is 2 weeks away, we should be at 82% of the 2017 reserve study. Between 2019 and 2023, we have in that reserve study, that 5-year period, $750,000 worth of repairs and renovations that are in that reserve study. If we maintain the same level of the reserves that are in the budget for 2019 through 2023 for that 5-year period, at the end of 2023, we will be able to spend that $750,000 on repairs and renovations and be at 100% of the reserve needed at the end of 2023. So the board has been doing its due diligence on the reserve study and the financials.
Thank you. Anyone else? You walk out this door and start, or you might as well stay in here. Pete, I know you got a question.
Only about you.
Well, we'll talk about it. Well, if there's no other questions, we will adjourn this portion of it. Feel free to talk to these gentlemen, get some ideas. Thank you for coming.
investigator work. FBI, IRS. Because I used to do the same thing. Oh, really? Yeah. I got mine every 5 years. What's wrong with no. Well, they were
That's the only reason I text last night.
So whenever they survived. So,
I just went and turned down something over on this side. Didn't want deeper voices.
yes, but I do want to, she said,
I mean, you never know what's going
all right, I've got mine. Yeah, I didn't want to mention that. Okay, I fucking